7 hidden desires women rarely say out loud. There are certain desires that people rarely explain directly. Not because they are necessarily hiding something. Not because every woman thinks the same way. And certainly not because attraction can be reduced to a simple formula. Human behavior is much more complicated than that. But there are emotional patterns that appear again and again in relationships, dating, attraction, and social dynamics. Some of those patterns are easy to see. Others operate beneath the surface. And if you understand those deeper patterns, you may begin to understand why some connections feel powerful, while others disappear almost as quickly as they begin. This is where the philosophy associated with Machiavelli becomes interesting. Machiavelli was not writing a dating manual. He was examining power, perception, loyalty, fear, ambition, leadership, and human behavior. His observations were about political life, but some of the underlying principles can also help us think about modern relationships, not as a way to manipulate women, but as a way to understand how people respond to confidence, uncertainty, respect, independence, and emotional stability. Because attraction is not simply about saying the right words. It is about what another person experiences when they are around you. And that is something many men misunderstand. They believe attraction can be purchased with attention. So they text constantly. They give endless compliments. They become available every minute of every day. They agree with everything. They abandon their own priorities. They make the relationship the center of their entire existence. And then they wonder why the connection feels weaker. The problem isn't necessarily that they are kind. The problem is that they have confused kindness with self-abandonment. There is a difference. A confident man can be generous without begging for approval. He can be affectionate without becoming dependent. He can desire a woman without losing himself. He can listen without becoming her emotional servant. And most importantly, he can care deeply while maintaining his own identity. That distinction is at the center of everything we're about to discuss. So let's begin. Desire number 1. She wants to feel understood. One of the most powerful emotional experiences in any relationship is the feeling of being genuinely understood. Not admired. Not complimented. Not simply desired physically. Understood. There is a huge difference. A woman can receive hundreds of compliments about her appearance and still feel emotionally invisible. Someone can tell her she's beautiful every day and never notice when she's mentally exhausted. Someone can ask, "What's wrong?" 10 times and still completely miss what she's communicating through her behavior. Being understood requires observation. It requires attention. It requires listening to what is said, and sometimes noticing what isn't said. Imagine a woman comes home after a difficult day. She says she's fine. Technically, she has answered your question, but maybe her voice is different. Maybe she is unusually quiet. Maybe she puts her phone down and stares into space. Maybe her smile looks forced. Maybe she's responding, but her mind is somewhere else. The average reaction is interrogation. What's wrong? Why are you acting weird? Are you angry with me? Tell me what happened. And suddenly, instead of feeling understood, she feels pressured. A better approach is simple observation. You seem a little quieter than usual today. Then stop. You don't need to force a confession. You don't need to solve everything. You simply demonstrate that you noticed. That can create something extremely valuable. Emotional safety. She can decide whether she wants to open up. And when someone chooses to reveal something rather than being forced to reveal it, the experience is completely different. This is one of the important lessons we can take from Machiavelli. Observation often reveals more than constant questioning. The person who watches carefully can understand the situation before everyone else reacts to it. In relationships, this doesn't mean becoming calculating. It means becoming attentive. Notice patterns. Notice changes. Notice energy. Notice when the person you're with is excited, nervous, disappointed, overwhelmed, or genuinely happy. But there is another side to this desire. A woman may want to be understood while simultaneously being cautious about being completely exposed. That isn't necessarily a contradiction. Being truly seen can feel wonderful, can also feel dangerous. When someone learns your fears, insecurities, weaknesses, dreams, and emotional triggers, they gain knowledge about you that could potentially hurt you. That is why trust takes time. A healthy relationship doesn't demand complete vulnerability on day one. It creates an environment where vulnerability becomes possible gradually. And that is where many men make a mistake. They want instant emotional intimacy. They want her to reveal everything. Her past, her fears, her insecurities, her deepest thoughts. But emotional intimacy cannot be demanded. It has to develop. You don't force a locked door open and then call it trust. You earn the key. That is why the first hidden desire is not simply, she wants a man who understands her. It is more precise. She wants to feel understood without feeling invaded. That difference matters. Desire number 2. She doesn't want a life with zero emotional energy. Now we reach a subject that is frequently misunderstood. Many people say they want stability, and they do. But stability does not mean emotional flatness. A healthy relationship can be secure while still being exciting. It can be peaceful without becoming lifeless. It can be predictable in values while remaining unpredictable in experiences. This is where the concept of tension becomes important. Tension does not mean drama. It does not mean manipulation. It does not mean deliberately ignoring someone. It does not mean making a woman insecure. Those are unhealthy behaviors. Healthy tension is simply the emotional energy created when two independent people have their own personalities, ambitions, perspectives, interests, and lives. Think about two people who have completely separate identities. They enjoy each other's company. They disagree sometimes. They challenge each other's ideas. They surprise each other. They have stories to tell because they continue living individual lives. Now compare that with a relationship where both people do everything together. Every conversation is identical. Every day follows the same routine. One person has no interests outside the relationship. Every decision revolves around the other person. There is no room for discovery. Over time, emotional energy can decline. This is why being always available is not automatically attractive. Availability itself is not the problem. The problem is when your availability communicates that you have nothing else happening in your life. Imagine you receive a message from someone you like. You happen to be free. You respond. Perfectly normal. But if you are sitting beside your phone all day waiting for her message, immediately responding every single time, canceling plans whenever she calls, and constantly monitoring whether she is online, the message becomes different. You are no longer simply showing interest. You're communicating dependence. And dependence can create pressure. A healthy man has responsibilities, friends, goals, work, creative interests, fitness, learning, family, projects, personal mission. His life continues even when the person he loves is not physically present. That is not emotional distance. That is individuality. And individuality creates something extremely important in attraction. Room for appreciation. When you spend time apart, you have experiences to bring back into the relationship. You have something new to discuss, something new to share, something new to discover. The relationship has oxygen. This is another useful lesson when studying Machiavelli and human behavior. People become less influential when they become completely predictable. But don't misunderstand the principle. You don't need to manufacture mystery. You don't need to disappear for 3 days. You don't need to play texting games. You don't need to pretend you're busy. You simply need to stop making another person the entire center of your existence. Your life should have momentum. And when your life has momentum, attraction doesn't need to be manufactured. It naturally has movement. Desire number 3. She wants something new to discover. Now let's go one level deeper. Human beings are naturally curious. Curiosity is one of the forces that keeps attention alive. When everything is already known, curiosity disappears. That doesn't mean a woman wants a man who is emotionally confusing. It means she doesn't want to feel like she understood the entire person after 3 conversations. There should still be depth. There should still be experiences. There should still be layers. Think about a book. If you read the first 10 pages and already know every character, every conflict, every ending, and every detail, there is little reason to continue. But if the story continues revealing new dimensions, you remain engaged. People can be similar. A man doesn't need to hide himself. He needs to develop himself. There is an important difference. Fake mystery says, I'm going to hide information so you chase me. Authentic depth says, I have many dimensions because I actually live a meaningful life. The second is far more powerful. Maybe today she discovers your sense of humor. Later she discovers your ability to remain calm during a difficult situation. Another day she learns about a skill you've been developing for years. Eventually she discovers how passionate you become when discussing something meaningful to you. Each experience adds another layer. That is not manipulation. That is personality. And it creates a relationship where discovery continues. The danger appears when a man stops growing after entering a relationship. He gets comfortable. He stops learning. He stops improving. He abandons his hobbies. He stops meeting friends. He stops pursuing ambitions. His entire world becomes the relationship. First, this can feel romantic. Eventually, it can become suffocating. Because now there is nothing new coming from him. The relationship becomes a closed loop. The same conversations. The same routine. The same reactions. The same weekend. The same complaints. The same promises. And eventually, one person begins wondering, is this all there is? That question can be devastating. So don't focus on becoming unpredictable. Focus on becoming interesting through growth. Learn something. Build something. Travel somewhere. Create something. Read. Exercise. Develop your career. Improve your communication. Explore your creativity. Challenge your assumptions. Have opinions. Develop principles. Become better. Then your relationship has something new to experience because you are not standing still. That is the healthy version of mystery. And it connects directly to another major psychological principle. People are often attracted to what they respect. Which brings us to the fourth desire. Desire number 4. She wants to respect the man she chooses. Many men focus heavily on making a woman feel special. They compliment her constantly. They tell her she's perfect. They put her on a pedestal. They praise every photograph. They tell her how lucky they would be to have her. But there is a question they rarely ask. Does she respect me? Admiration cannot be one-directional forever. If you constantly admire someone while they have no reason to admire you, the relationship can become unbalanced. Respect doesn't mean being intimidating. It doesn't mean dominating someone. It doesn't mean acting superior. Respect comes from qualities that are demonstrated rather than announced. Discipline, integrity, competence, emotional control, courage, purpose, consistency, responsibility, the ability to make decisions, the ability to admit mistakes, the ability to stand firm when something genuinely matters. These qualities create credibility, and credibility is much stronger than bragging. A man who constantly announces how successful he is doesn't automatically appear successful. Sometimes the opposite happens. When someone is genuinely competent, their behavior usually communicates it. They don't need to explain themselves every 5 minutes. This is another place where the philosophy of Machiavelli becomes relevant. Machiavelli understood that perception matters enormously in human relationships and leadership. But there is an important modern lesson here. Don't manufacture an image. Build substance. If you want respect, become respectable. If you want confidence, develop competence. If you want admiration, create a life that gives people something real to admire. And don't build your entire identity around impressing women. Build it because it is your life. That distinction changes everything. A man whose entire mission is, how do I make her like me, is constantly seeking external approval. A man who asks, what kind of person do I want to become, has a completely different center of gravity. He isn't cold. He isn't arrogant. He simply has direction. And direction creates confidence. That brings us to the final principle for this first part. You should never try to become the perfect man for someone else. Become a stronger version of yourself. Because attraction built on pretending is fragile. Eventually the performance ends. But when the qualities are real, there is nothing to maintain. You simply continue being yourself. And that is where the next hidden desire becomes extremely important. Because once a woman begins to respect you, she may also begin to notice something else. How stable are you when things don't go your way? What happens when she disagrees? What happens when plans change? What happens when you are criticized? What happens when someone challenges you? What happens when emotions become intense? That is where confidence stops being something you talk about and becomes something you demonstrate. And that is exactly where desire number 5 begins. We'll explore emotional stability, boundaries, attraction without desperation, and why constantly trying to keep someone happy can sometimes destroy the very connection you're trying to protect. And remember one thing before you continue. The goal isn't to manipulate women. The goal isn't to control women. The goal isn't to memorize psychological tricks. The goal is to understand human behavior while developing enough self-awareness to stop destroying your own relationships through insecurity, desperation, fear, or dependence. Because the strongest form of attraction isn't pretending you don't care. It is caring deeply while still knowing who you are.